Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi. Welcome again to our program.
Thank you both very much for inviting me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. First question, of course, general impressions, general sort of perspective. What's going on the ground for our viewers and listeners?
The Epstein coalition is losing the war, and it's clear as day. It's been over a month now. The Iranians are pounding them with missiles and drones. They're not running out of missiles. The so-called regime, as they in the West love to call it, is not collapsing. It's strong. People are on the streets in defense. All the stereotypes, all the narratives of Iran have been shattered. People across the world see that the Islamic Republic has immense popular support, that people are on the streets despite the airstrikes that target the people. Just 3 days ago, they carried out an airstrike on a gathering of people in Artish Square, near Artish Square, and murdered a woman. A couple of weeks back, I was at one of the gatherings. They fired a missile at it, and another woman was killed. But despite that, people are on the streets across the country every night and sometimes during the day for certain ceremonies. So the Trump regime and the Netanyahu regime, and it's not clear who's in charge. Probably it's Netanyahu who is in charge, and Trump is his subordinate. But they are now, out of anger that they couldn't destroy the will of the people, the Islamic Republic, nor could they destroy Iran's missile and drone capabilities, its military capabilities. They've been taking it out on the people from day one. They started with a mass slaughter of girls at an elementary school, 200, and this was the first day. So this target was, they had weeks to decide on these targets, the first wave. These were well vetted. In my view, and in the view of people across Iran, the strike on the school was absolutely intentional. If it was like a strike today, after 3 weeks, one could envisage a scenario where some officer was in a rush to find a new target and he made a catastrophic mistake. But this was wave one. So on day one, when they murdered all these kids, or other girls who were at a gymnasium, 20 or so, who their names were forgotten because of this horror, those were all intentional. And no one here will believe anything. And the United States has not even bothered to apologize, even to the families. They've tried to blame it on Iran. And this, of course, shows how the United States and Western media work. That just shows how those riots, those violent riots, that armed uprising that we saw on January 8th and 9th, where they killed hundreds of police officers and so many people were murdered in the crossfire because of these terrorists. Back then, they lied about the casualties, and whatever the casualties were, and they were 3,117, the West is to blame, the Western intelligence agencies. But Western media, being Epstein class controlled media, they of course repeat the narratives as obedient workers for their overlords. But so they were frustrated from the beginning. Or let's say at the beginning they wanted to terrorize Iranians, but then increasingly it was clear that they were becoming frustrated. They said that Iran's missiles and drones are decreasing in number. They kept bringing these charts. But now we see that for the last couple of weeks, the Iranians have been hitting very hard. And today, unprecedented. It's been unprecedented, the amount of strikes carried out. So because out of this frustration, they're increasingly targeting civilian infrastructure. Now you see Trump being the madman, evil monster that he is constantly threatening to destroy Iran, constantly threatening to destroy critical infrastructure for women and children, electricity, things that kids need or hospitals need. And he's threatening it all the time, and no one in the Western media calls him out. No one says you're a monster for saying this or threatening to do this, and actually carrying it out, because the Israeli regime is now striking critical infrastructure, and Iran is going to retaliate. And Iran is going to retaliate hard, and it will gradually destroy all the countries, these proxies in the Persian Gulf region, and they will continue to hammer the Israeli regime. These proxies are easier to destroy because they don't need long-range missiles. They can use short-range and medium-range drones and short and medium-range missiles, which they have hundreds of thousands of. So this is where we are. We're confronting a psychopath. Both of them are psychopaths. I mean, Trump, of course, being probably Netanyahu's subordinate, and I think it's going to get a lot more intense, and the destruction is going to increase, and that will lead, of course, to the destruction of oil and gas assets across the Persian Gulf region. And if that happens, then we don't need to discuss the Strait of Hormuz anymore, because there will be a global economic collapse. And a global economic collapse will have consequences that are just mind-boggling. Right? It's just beyond my ability to comprehend. But it didn't have to be this way. I mean, the United States is basically being obedient to Zionists, to the Israeli regime, as Joe Kent pointed out in his resignation letter, and as he subsequently said, of course we knew this, we didn't need him to tell us, but this makes it more official. He was an insider, key intelligence figure, and basically said that Iran wasn't a threat, Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon, we're doing it because Zionist lobby wants us to do it. So the American economy is going to go south, the global economy is going to be devastated, all because of Netanyahu and the Zionists. And I believe that this is going to harm the Zionists more than anyone else at the end of the day, because the world is going to blame them for their miseries. Look at India. The Indian Prime Minister went to Israel, behaved foolishly, sort of pledged allegiance to Netanyahu, and Netanyahu doesn't care about India. He doesn't care about Indians. He's more than happy to sacrifice them. So the Indian economy is going downhill because of Netanyahu's policies. And India is probably one of the most vulnerable countries in the world because it doesn't have the sort of reserves for oil or for natural gas that China has, or Japan has, or the Europeans have, or South Korea has. So ordinary Indians who are just struggling to make ends meet, they are being hit hard because of the Zionists, who are, of course, consider everyone to be Amalek and inferior creatures, whether they're Muslim or Arab or Indian or North American or white or black or whatever.
Speaking of Zionists, I want to ask you about the UAE. The Western media has consistently reported on their not just willingness, but eagerness to join in this fight. And then just recently, about an hour or two prior to this, they invoked Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. This is the most serious mechanism available, and it calls for immediate action to ensure the safe navigation of the Strait of Hormuz and authorizes military force. Has there been a reaction in you? I saw you kind of laugh. Has there been any reaction, or do you have any thoughts on this or this mechanism?
Nothing is going to happen. This regime will probably not survive much longer. And Iran will make sure that in future the Persian Gulf is not a platform for U.S. aggression. The Emirates, of course, is a deeply sinister regime, and probably one of the most evil regimes on this planet. After the Israelis and the US. I mean, these are the top three, perhaps. And they've gone way too far. They've supported the Israeli project of destroying our region in North Africa, in the Horn of Africa, and of course in the Arabian Peninsula. They are so sinister that even the Saudis have been turning against them. But for Iran, enough is enough. The Persian Gulf regimes have all been supportive of the United States and in their dirty war in Syria, their invasion of Iraq. I mean, these regimes all funded Saddam Hussein when he invaded Iran. They gave him hundreds of billions of dollars. When the United States wanted to invade Iraq, it was Iran that opposed it. Iran's opposed. Seyed Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon opposed it. And even a lot of Shias and Muslims and Sunnis and others in Iraq were angry with Iran and him for their public position. But they said, no matter what monster he is, because we all suffered at the hands of Saddam, in principle, US aggression against Iraq is unacceptable. But all of these Arab dictatorships, they supported the US against their former ally Saddam Hussein. They supported the ISIS and the creation of ISIS and Al Qaeda in Syria. They together, all of them, including Turkey under Erdogan, they supported the genocidal war against the people of Yemen, until, of course, the blockade, when they had their own internal differences, and then Erdogan and the Qatari regime tilted away from these on Yemen. They destroyed Libya, and the list goes on. They helped destroy Lebanon. They never assisted the Lebanese people against the Israeli regime. None of them. None of them supported the Palestinian cause. Qatar and Erdogan are, in this regard, the most hypocritical of them all, because they pretend to be supporters of the Palestinian people, but in reality, they are just as much a part of the empire as anyone else. We've seen Trump thank both of them many, many times. And it's obvious where they stand. They only use the Palestinian cause to create an aura of legitimacy for themselves and to create, like Al Jazeera, which they're good people at Al Jazeera, but Al Jazeera as a network and the rest of the media of Qatar can only function with the permission of the empire. They will never do anything that causes anger in Washington. That's why none of these countries are sanctioned. That's why none of these countries are ever punished, because they conform with the demands of Washington. So the Emirates, I think the big question is whether we will have a new regime there, or and also in the other countries, because as the collapse continues, as they continue to strike Iranian key infrastructure, Iran is going to hit back. And Iran, though it will become very painful, the Iranians, we see on the streets, people will hold the Islamic Republic together, and we will defeat the other side. But these regimes, when their key infrastructure collapses, their means for controlling the people will come to an end. They have millions of people, foreign indentured servants, semi-slaves, that they will not be able to control in the Emirates or in Qatar, or their own people for that matter. Many of these despots, their families have already left. So it's not clear if they will remain. And if they do remain, there's going to be a new set of rules in the Persian Gulf region. No more basis for the United States to be able to murder and destroy nations from there across the region.
I want to ask about, one U.S. colony to the other, Kuwait. Yesterday, the Iraqi resistance, Abu al-Wala'i, released a statement saying if the Kuwait territories are used to launch an attack on Iran, or if they will consider that a breach of regional security borders, or if Jolani tries to breach the borders of Lebanon, they will consider that. He says if either of those two scenarios occur, we will inevitably push the resistance axis to take similar steps and breach regional borders. The Iraqis have talked about taking back Kuwait and also taking Deir ez-Zor in Syria. What are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on the Iraqi resistance first and foremost? And then yesterday, after that statement, the Americans made sure to use Kuwait to launch an attack on Iran.
Well, Ayatollah Khamenei, the martyr, and he was, I think, the greatest man of the 21st century. He devised this military capability in Iran, which is absolutely brilliant. And he predicted all of this, and he warned about a regional war, and he created this axis of resistance to the empire. And he did such an extraordinary job that in his absence, the armed forces and the resistance function as if he's still here. seriously, for me, it's as if he's still alive. Of course, in our worldview, he is.
Yes.
But it's as if he is in charge, because everything is functioning as if he is in charge. They're assassinating people. Just hours ago, the Epstein coalition assassinated the former foreign minister, Dr. Harozi, and his wife. And she was martyred, and apparently he's badly injured. I don't know how badly injured he is. He's an old man. And so, they just murder people, and they bomb apartment blocks, slaughter everyone inside just to get a person. Sometimes that person isn't there, but they don't care. This is the Epstein coalition. And Western media will call these surgical strikes, or just like in Beirut, when they bomb apartment blocks, they'll call them Hezbollah strongholds. For anyone, I've lived in Beirut. These are just apartment blocks, which they bring down. They bring down these entire apartment blocks. These are just homes, but they just do it out of malice. And the Western journalists in Lebanon know this. They know it. They have fixers who live in these neighborhoods. They have drivers who live in these neighborhoods. They have producers who live in these neighborhoods. They know exactly what's going on, but they lie because that's how they pay the mortgage for their apartments or homes in the United States and across Europe, or that's perhaps how they'll get their passports and citizenship. Who knows? But the war is growing regional, and as the Israeli regime intensifies along with the Trump regime, we are going to see an intensified response from the Axis. The Iraqis will easily be able to take Kuwait. They will easily be able to undermine the Al-Qaeda proxy regime brought to power by the United States in Syria. And Yemen could easily destroy Saudi oil exports that are taking place through the Red Sea. And they can invade Saudi Arabia. Remember, Qatar has a population of 400,000 or so. The Emirates has a population of 1,100,000 or so. And these are all dictatorships. No one is going to die for these families. How are they going to stand up against Yemen and Iraq and Iran? They're not. And Trump does not have that ability. So Trump can create misery that he's going to bring down his own economy, and he's going to bring down his proxies in this region if he keeps pushing.
I wanted to ask you about an article and some media that came out of Iran that said that the Emirates is targeting Iranian citizens and Iranian nationals, seizing their assets to the tune of $500 billion for those who, of course, work in the Emirates and those who might not agree fully, those who do business, you name it. There's a whole variety. I have some family members who live there and do business there. So my question is, what does this look like in reshaping how Iranians themselves travel to the Arabian Peninsula, to a lot of these countries there? And I was even thinking, are we going to go to a situation where even, for example, pilgrims, especially from Iran and other places, might be discriminated against for doing the Hajj? Because that's also been an issue in the past, not so much, but it has been spoken about. I'm wondering what you think, how this changes everything in the region for how Iranians are involved with these countries in the region.
These regimes are powers that are falling. They're declining very rapidly. The Emirates, they may think of them highly of themselves because of the money that used to be there, but that money is all melting away. The billionaire, the Epstein class people, they've left. No one is ever going to return there again, and that's to the benefit of the people there. No one is ever going to fill those palaces and skyscrapers again. That era is over. And again, this is to the benefit of the people. No country benefits from the existence of the Epstein class. Where do you think all the drug money in Afghanistan goes to? It goes to the banks in the Emirates. The gold that is stolen across Africa through these dirty wars and these civil conflicts instigated by the West and these despots, the illegal mines that they create to steal the gold, Where do you think that gold goes to? It goes to the Emirates. The Emirates is corruption. It is the manifestation of corruption. It is the symbol of corruption. Like the Israeli regime. Of course, nothing parallels the Israeli regime because it is openly and officially an ethno-supremacist regime, and they claim, of course, an ethnicity that they don't have. They're not Semites, but that aside, the Emirates, they will no longer have that status, and every day that goes by, they go downhill. And this is a family dictatorship. When they lose control, as they're losing control, then other people will start raising questions. Other people will start raising voices. So I don't see a long-term future for any of these regimes. And as I said, when this war is over, the new status of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, in particular, will remain in place. Iran will not allow these regimes to behave like they did before. Iran has no problem with them having good relations with the United States, economic relations with the United States, cultural relations with the United States. But Iran will no longer allow them to be platforms for genocidal attacks, for genocide, for aggression against Iran or Yemen or Syria or Iraq or anyone else, or to be allies, either formal or informal, because they're all allies of the Israeli regime. Qatar, the Emirates, all of them are directly or indirectly allies. Some are more open about it, like the Emirates, some are less open about it. But remember, why is the political wing of Hamas in Qatar? Because the Americans and the Israelis asked them to host them. Why does Al Jazeera continue to function? Because the Americans allow it to function. It's clear as day. I've learned some things about, and the two of you would know better than I, but I've learned a lot about the US bases in the Persian Gulf recently because of the events. These are not just like military bases, like they have influence across these countries. They've created networks of influence where in fact they are in control of everything. And they keep these regimes in power through that network of control. Well, that network of control is diminishing. That wealth is diminishing. That influence is diminishing. So the real question is whether these family dictatorships will survive. And those Iranians who lost their money, I don't know what the real number is. I don't think anyone really knows. But it hurts the Emirates itself by stealing people's money. But these people, many of them, they're just ordinary people. And many, the people who are usually, proportionately speaking, the people inside Iran are usually the more supportive of the Islamic Republic. Some, of course, are supportive. They live abroad. Some of them are no longer supportive when they live abroad because it's trouble. So they become quiet. And some, of course, are always in opposition. So it doesn't hurt Iran as a country. It's hurting the Emirates more, but they're just showing malice against these people. And basically, they're telling these Iranian expats who may have always supported the West and these Arab dictatorships against Iran that you're fools. I mean, just recently, I think a football player in Iran, I'm not sure if I think it was the Emirates, he went and said something positive about, because I think he plays there. I'm not sure. I don't want to name him and shame him, but he's on the national football team, and he went and said something foolish, and he got a very negative response. And now the Emirates is doing this to all those Iranians who live there. It actually strengthens Iran. It shows young Iranians who may have been dazzled by the glitz and glamour of the Emirates for the wealthy. Of course, you know that the underclass and the slaves, you don't see them in the Emirates. But they may many of them may have thought, why aren't we like them? God forbid. But now they see the reality of these regimes. They see how they're agents of empire, how much malice they show to ordinary people, and how vulnerable they are, and how their overlords are unable to protect them or don't care to protect them. The Americans are not in the Persian Gulf to protect these regimes. They're there to protect the Israeli regime. They couldn't care less about anyone else.
On that note, Sarah and I have been watching videos since day one of a lot of Iranians going back to Iran, which of course stuns people. We're saying, wait a second, they're going to the country while it's under assault by the Epstein class, instead of everyone fleeing. We're not seeing the numbers fleeing like we saw in other countries in the region. And so people are wondering, what's the difference with Iran? Why are Iranians going back? Why are Iranians so patriotic? And one thing that I've seen is actually amongst people who are supportive of the government, which is increasing, I believe, day by day, more so and more so. People are even people who are in opposition, some of them are slowly leaving the opposition and saying, this has gone too far. Actually, we are in support of our country now. We're seeing even pre-1979 music being played at popular rallies. So I'm just curious, what do you make of this? What do you make of this phenomenon? We've seen some videos, amazing, women without anything, just openly saying, I was protesting against the government, and now I'm here to support my homeland.
Because they now see through the propaganda. They've woken up to the reality. They see that everything that Ayatollah Khamenei has been saying all these years was exactly correct. And they see how those countries that they learn to admire, that they're just agents of empire, whether it's Erdogan's Turkey, or whether it's Mohammed bin Zayed's Emirates, or whether it's Saudi Arabia under Mohammed bin Salman, or any of these regimes, or the Qatari regime. I don't even remember the despot's name. Any of them, they don't have any credibility. The entire West has no credibility. So these young Iranians, and some of them are students not of mine, but students in my faculty. During the first few days, 3 students somehow were able to communicate with me. They got they were able to establish contact with me. They were not my own students, but they were able to, and they were all 3 of them were part of this. They were on the streets during the riots. They were not the people with the guns and so on, but they got caught up in the excitement and all these Persian language media channels that are funded by Western intelligence agencies. They were fooled by them, and the 3 of them, 2 of them were quite emotional. One in particular, I don't even remember their names. They weren't, I don't know them. They never again came and asked for anything from me. They just said, "What can we do?" Each in their own way. What can we do to make up for what we did, basically? And I had no idea, so I just gave some general ideas. Maybe you could go to this place or that place and see how you could help with, I don't know, at a local clinic or a mosque or a health center or whatever. Maybe you can, approach them and see what you can do. But the point is that people are waking up and they were saying that Ayatollah Khamenei, his understanding, his worldview was absolutely correct. And General Soleimani, he had a very famous speech and said, "We are the nation of martyrdom. We are the nation of Imam Hussein." And that is basically what these people on the streets have turned into. You see teenage girls, 16-year-olds on the streets, they fire missiles at them and they don't budge. They stand their ground. Where on this planet have you ever seen such a thing? I was there on one occasion. On the last Friday of Ramadan, they always have a rally across the country, rallies across the country and outside the country, supporters of the resistance, to support the Palestinian cause. It's called the Al-Quds Day, or the International Al-Quds Day. And the Americans and Israelis fired missiles at them, at the protesters. And you don't hear this in Western media, but the footage is there. I'm sure the 2 of you have seen it. I posted a few clips where the bomb strikes. People, they didn't stampede, they didn't scream, they just stood their ground and continued chanting. And a woman was murdered 3 nights ago. I think in another neighborhood, they did the same to another woman. You don't see this in Western media. They bombed other cities as well, in Hamadan and Anzali in the north of Iran. But people don't budge. So the front lines are now the cities. And you see teenage girls who could be at home doing what teenagers do. Teenage boys who could be doing whatever they like to do, playing computer, playing with their cell phone at home. They stand their ground. So there's a huge transformation. Even in the 1980s, during the height of the revolution, where Saddam Hussein, at the behest of the West, invaded Iran and was provided with all sorts of weapons and funding to do so, even then, the scenes that I've seen during the last month, I never saw before. And just as a, I don't know how to put this, but like I would go on the streets at night, and then people would approach me and say, "Don't come." And I'm not a government official, and I'm not. I'm not afraid. If I was, it's not that I have a problem with being a government official. It's just that I'm not. I think that what I do is I'm more effective doing what I do as an academic. I mean, if I felt that if someone offered me a job and I felt that I would be more effective doing that job, I would agree. I've no problem. I'm not trying to distance myself from anyone, but I'm not a government official. But since I've been in the media, some people on the streets, they know who I am. So in these rallies, they come and they think I have I'm in contact with leaders and so on. They say, "Don't come to the streets. We'll take care of this ourselves. Don't tell the leaders not to come on the streets anymore. We need them protected. They shouldn't be vulnerable." This is what, because they saw this Dr. Larijani, the chair of the Supreme National Security Council, come to the streets, and he was subsequently martyred. When they threatened to kill him, he put a quote of Imam Hussein, he tweeted it. He's not afraid of it. He said, "I'm not afraid of martyrdom." And he was literally martyred the day after. And the president came to the street, the foreign minister, the head of the judiciary. When they bombed that rally, the head of the judiciary was actually doing an interview, and he didn't even blink. So Hegseth was saying that these are rats. I mean, it's disgusting, really, what the United States is, the regime. But he said these Iranian leaders are rats and they're hiding underground. They're all among the people. And now people are saying, "Don't come. We will stand on, you go do your job, stay off the streets." And this is this is the relationship between the leadership and the people. And the West can bark all they want. The New York Times can bark all it wants. Fox News can bark all it wants. The Guardian can bark day and night. The BBC and Sky News, they can bark and bark and bark. But the reality is here for people to see. For the first week after the martyrdom of Ayatollah Khamenei, we didn't have a leader. Of course, the Constitution had a solution. We had a 3-man leadership in accordance with the Constitution, but we didn't have the leader. Everything was ordinary. There were no queues. There were no lines for gasoline. There was no rush into supermarkets. Not at all. Everything was normal under the bombing with no leader, and the military was fighting back and striking day and night. So the people kept the state together. So if the state, what state on this planet, and I'm serious, what state on this planet Earth, can function under such circumstances? There are none. And I think it's for American analysts to go and read about Iran, read about its history. Actually, there's a good book that people could read. It's somewhat old, but it's called Going to Tehran by Flint and Hillary Levitt, who both worked in the White House, ironically. Flint was the head of the Middle East for the National Security Council, the National Security Council under Condoleezza Rice, of all people. And Hillary, she was in charge of the Persian Gulf. That's where they met and got married. And then over Iraq, Flint Leverett resigned over the Iraq War, and he went into a think tank. And then they started researching about Iran and seeing the truth. And since they're very decent and honest intellectuals, they wrote a book on Iran. And because of that book, they were marginalized and isolated. They could have had the best of this world coming, how it is for people who leave government. But the book is a really good book. I think I don't agree with everything in it, but I think people should read it. Going to Tehran by Flint and Hillary Leverett. But if I was a U.S. government official, I'd read about Imam Hussein and Karbala and what happened and how and why is it that Iranians are so steadfast and so resilient and so resistant against oppression. If they read about Ashura and Karbala, they would understand. They would understand who Zainab, the sister of Imam Hussein, was. And if they had done their research, if they had listened to Flint and Hillary Leverett, if they'd read about Iran's religious heritage, they would never have attacked the country.
I do want to read you a message from the students in Iraq. I think that they're celebrating today off of their World Cup qualifier, but they said they ask about you a lot. They studied under you at your university. They ask about you. They say hi from Baghdad. A student named Sarah, she said she prays for you and Iran every day. So I thought that was really heartwarming. One last question that I have, and we'll let you go after that. You and myself and many others have said the only way this ends is with the full and total destruction of the entity and Zionism in general. Do you still ascribe to that? We saw people are, negotiations being a possibility. I don't see them. Do you still ascribe to that total destruction of the entity and the ideology of Zionism? And how do you see that and what will come after?
Well, I don't know if I don't think that this episode itself will lead to the imminent destruction of Zionism. I think that ultimately the United States is going to have to back down. There'll be some sort of agreement which accept where Iranian conditions are met in one form or another, and of course Iran's allies have to be a part of that. But I think that the damage that that has been brought upon the Israeli regime during the past 2.5 years is irreversible. And the regime is going to be hated across the world more than ever before, not just for Gaza, but because they're destroying the lives of people everywhere. Because everyone is going to be affected by what's happening. And everyone knows that it is the Israeli regime that's behind it. It is Zionism. So whether it's India, or whether it's Bolivia, whether it is Nigeria, or whether it's Argentina, whether it's the United States, or whether it is Australia, people will remember that their lives changed and became much worse, if not extraordinarily bad, because of the Zionist regime. So you have this genocidal regime that is waging war after war against ordinary people, and that is dragging the world towards the abyss. And then it is not going to succeed. So you're going to have huge internal contradictions and demoralization. I just don't think it's going to. I'm certain that it's not going to last. So these are the dying years of the regime. So if there's a ceasefire, well, not a ceasefire, but if there's some sort of agreement where the fighting comes to an end, because we're not going to accept a ceasefire. We will make sure that the facts on the ground change so that the United States never attacks Iran again. And that's already happening, by the way. Because the status of the Strait of Hormuz, by changing it, that is a big step in getting reparations and making sure that these dictatorships in the Persian Gulf can no longer be a threat to Iran, or the axis of resistance and the people of Iraq and Lebanon and Yemen and Palestine. So there may be a halt or an end to the current round, but I think that the Israeli regime is dead. When you look at what people in the United States are saying about Israel, the regime today, I mean, you're both of you are young, but you're old enough to remember 3 years ago. Talking about it, the Israeli regime and Zionism, it just didn't register for most people. And when you spoke about it, even to Western, I mean, I've always been talking about the Israeli regime to Westerners and journalists and academics. And when you talk about it and you say, this is ethno-supremacism, you speak about human rights and equality and Black Lives Matter and in the United States, and even those people who were in, like a part of the so-called Black Lives Matter movement, I'd say, well, Palestine, and they just they just changed the topic. He was like, they didn't care, or they just saw a contradiction, a very deep contradiction in what they were saying and what they were doing, at best being indifferent, and so they just didn't want to confront that reality. But now it's changed. You see young Jews today in the United States turning against the Israeli regime. You see young people across the United States from all walks of life turning against it. Now, as the economy goes downhill, I think a lot of MAGA people, those who are like in the Christian Zionist cult or the MAGA cult, when life gets tough for them, when their businesses go downhill, when they start losing their jobs, when they can't make ends meet, they have no principles. So at least I think the pain and the hardship, they too will have to accept reality that has been brought upon them by their God, Trump, and their Lord, Netanyahu. And I think that is going to cause them to turn away from this cult and this notion that somehow Jesus supports genocide. This crazy notion.
Professor Marandi, as always, a brilliant tour de force in this interview. Thank you again for all that you're doing. Please, from Sarah and us and from all of DD Geopolitics and all of our viewers and listeners, please stay safe, and your family as well. And we are with you to the end. So thank you again for coming on. Look forward to having you again soon.
Thank you both very much for having me, and congratulations on all the excellent work that you do. And although dark days are approaching, it's getting darker and darker, but as I've said many times before, there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. And in order to defeat evil, you have to struggle and you have to make sacrifices. And the people in Iran and in the axis of resistance are more than prepared to do so.
Thank you again.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
All right,
We appreciate it.
we will cut to a short commercial break and we will be right back.
Well, I'll be leaving then.
Sir, Iranians have released a new Lego-style animation.
Habibi, come closer. Come closer, Habibi.
Well, let's check. Well, I guess we have some super chats. Sorry, guys, we couldn't see your super chats as we have to use another platform to stream in Iran. But thank you all for being here. Australia, don't send us your money. You need it for your increasing petrol prices. But thank you, Miss Shorty. Prices in it's funny because last night, the three stooges, Albanese, Trump, and Starmer, all said they were going to make statements. And I said, oh, Jesus, take the wheel. We're going to war. And Albanese just came out and said things are going to get harder. Good luck. I was like, okay. So that was that. I don't know what Keir Starmer said, but here's our brother in the UK, Uncle Haz. I can't say that. Dalam Seyed. I can't. I'm not going to do that. You could say it, Chris.
Oh my God. Azia Dalam Seyed Ma Golamun. Come on, love. Come on. Come on.
I can't say that. We love
Come
you,
on, we
Uncle
love Amujan. Come on.
Uncle Hans, you have to go to the RAF Air Force bases and protest against the A-10s that are landing there today. By the way, guys, you saw those A-10s stopping in Britain on their way to the Middle East. A-10s are only used for ground support, air support for a ground invasion. So God is with the righteous. Humanity stands with Iran. Absolutely, it does, Candace Vega. Thank you so much, Robert, for your support. Iran's boldness aspires all worldwide. I agree. I've been watching so many of the videos and so much of the stuff coming out of Iran, obviously, because I'm glued to it, but it has been so inspiring. And also, I want to recommend you guys go read. I read the Last Will and Testament of Yahya Sinwar the other night, and I really recommend that you read it. It was something that I really needed to read at this moment in time, and I highly recommend you guys just Google Yahya Sinwar, Last Will and Testament. Thank you for becoming a member. Spark this TLE, Spark Thistle. Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Will, as always, for your support. And Mickey, again, we couldn't be more ashamed of our leadership. I agree, but I think that things are changing. I think that MAGA is getting smaller and smaller. I'm hopeful. America is so arrogant. The Ukrainian counteroffensive for 2023 was hyped up for 6 months, giving Russia more than enough time to prepare. Recently, in Venezuela and Iran, they announced it on a bullhorn. I still ascribe to the viewpoint that the 2023 failed counteroffensive was start of World War III. But who knows what everybody else considers it. What I do want to do is read you guys Pezeshkian's letter to, if you're American, it's to you. And if you're not, then I maybe listen anyway. But in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, to the people of the United States of America, and to all those who, amid a flood of distortions and manufactured narratives, continue to seek the truth and aspire to a better life. Iran, by this very name, character, and identity, is one of the oldest continuous civilizations in human history. Despite its historical and geographical advantages at various times, Iran has never, in its modern history, chosen the path of aggression, expansion, colonialism, or domination. Even after enduring multiple occupations, invasions, and sustained pressure from global powers, and despite possessing military superiority over many of its neighbors, Iran has never initiated a war. Yet it has resolutely and bravely repelled those who have attacked it. The Iranian people harbor no enmity toward other nations, including the people of America, Europe, or neighboring countries. Even in the face of repeated foreign interventions and pressures throughout their proud history, Iranians have consistently drawn a clear distinction between governments and the peoples they govern. This is a deeply rooted principle in Iranian culture and collective consciousness, not a temporary political stance. For this reason, portraying Iran as a threat is neither consistent with historical reality nor with present-day observable facts. Such a perception is the product of political and economic whims of the powerful. They need to manufacture an enemy in order to justify pressure, maintain military dominance, sustain the arms industry, and control strategic markets. In such an environment, if a threat does not exist, it is invented. Within this same framework, the United States concentrated the largest number of its forces, bases, and military capacities around Iran, a country that, at least since the founding of the United States, has never initiated a war. Recent American aggressions launched from these very bases have demonstrated how threatening such a military presence truly is. Naturally, no country confronted with such conditions would forego strengthening its defensive capabilities. What Iran has done and continues to do is a measured response grounded in legitimate self-defense and by no means an initiation of war or aggression. Relations between Iran and the United States were not originally hostile, and early interactions between the Iranian and American people were not marred by hostility or tension. The turning point, however, was the 1953 coup d'etat, an illegal American intervention aimed at preventing the nationalization of Iran's own resources. That coup disrupted Iran's democratic process, reinstated dictatorship, and sowed deep distrust among Iranians toward U.S. policies. This distrust deepened further with America's support for the Shah's regime, its backing of Saddam Hussein during the imposed war of the 1980s, the imposition of the longest and most comprehensive sanctions in modern history, and ultimately unprovoked military aggression, twice in the midst of negotiations against Iran. Yet all these pressures have failed to weaken Iran. On the contrary, the country has grown stronger in many areas. Literacy rates have tripled from roughly 30% before the Islamic Revolution to over 90%. Today, higher education has expanded dramatically. Significant advances have been achieved in modern technology, healthcare services have improved, and infrastructure has developed at a pace and scale incomparable to the past. These are measurable, observable realities that stand independent of fabricated narratives. At the same time, the destructive and inhumane impact of sanctions, war, and aggression on the lives of the resilient Iranian people must not be underestimated. The continuation of military aggression and recent bombings profoundly affect people's lives, attitudes, and perspectives. This reflects a fundamental human truth. When war inflicts irreparable harm on lives, homes, cities, and futures, people will not remain indifferent toward those responsible. This raises a fundamental question. Exactly which of the American people's interests are truly being served by this war? Was there any objective threat from Iran to justify such behavior? Does the massacre of innocent children, the destruction of cancer treatment pharmaceutical facilities, or boasting about bombing a country back to the Stone Ages serve any purpose other than further damaging the United States' global standing? Iran pursued negotiations, reached an agreement, and fulfilled all its commitments. The decision to withdraw from that agreement, escalate toward confrontation, and launch 2 acts of aggression in the midst of negotiations were destructive choices made by the United States government, choices that served the delusions of a foreign aggressor. Attacking Iran's vital infrastructure, including energy and industrial facilities, directly targeting the Iranian people. Beyond constituting a war crime, such actions carry consequences that extend far beyond Iran's borders. They generate instability, increase human and economic costs, and perpetuate cycles of tension, planting seeds of resentment that will endure for years. This is not a demonstration of strength. It is a sign of strategic bewilderment and an inability to achieve a sustainable solution. Excuse me. It is not also the case that America has entered this aggression as a proxy for Israel, influenced and manipulated by that regime. Is it not true that Israel, by manufacturing an Iranian threat, seeks to divert global attention away from its crimes toward the Palestinians? Is it not evident that Israel now aims to fight Iran to the last American soldier and the last American taxpayer dollar, shifting the burden of its delusions onto Iran, the region, and the United States itself in pursuit of illegitimate interests? Is America first truly only among the priorities of the U.S. government today? I invite you to look beyond the machinery of misinformation, an integral part of this aggression, and instead speak with those who have visited Iran. Observe the many accomplished Iranian immigrants educated in Iran who now teach and conduct research at the world's most prestigious universities or contribute to the most advanced technology firms in the West. Do these realities align with the distortions you are being told about Iran and its people? Today, the world stands at a crossroads. Continuing along the path of confrontation is more costly and futile than ever before. The choice between confrontation and engagement is both real and consequential. Its outcome will shape the future for generations to come. Throughout its millennia of proud history, Iran has outlasted many aggressors. All that remains of them are tarnished names in history, while Iran endures, resilient, dignified, and proud. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, proud to be Iranian.
Yeah.
Very proud these days. Always, of course, but especially these days. And very, very resentful of all of the Iranians who led us to this point.
I do want to give you the bad news, though. That after that very eloquent, beautiful statement from Pezeshkian, we have to look forward in 4 hours and statement from President Trump threatening. I don't know what we're going to get. And it's also April Fool's Day. Don't forget, we're going to the moon today for some reason. I don't know why.
That's Artemis 2 mission that they were talking about?
Yes, so we're doing the moon thing. Also, so tonight, Trump will be giving a statement. I do want to ask you before that statement. So we've been hearing bitching about NATO, a lot of kvetching about NATO. Here's my theory I want to present to you. Trump has always wanted to pull out of NATO. Israel wants us out of NATO. Okay, that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Israel
Do you know
wants
why?
us. Yeah, we're gonna wait, don't spoil
Oh,
my thing
sorry.
here. Ruin my parade.
Sorry.
So, okay, so I see a lot of this. I also see that Trump is saying we're not going to support Ukraine anymore because you're not supporting us in Iran, blah, 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 blah. I want to say to our viewers, think about it. If we pull out of NATO, what does that allow Israel to do? Okay, Chris, go ahead.
I think it gives them the carte blanche to go after Turkey.
You did it. And I agree. And I'm not excited. I don't mean I'm excited for them to attack Turkey. We have to understand that Israel needs the destruction of Turkey and the Islamic world in general. And they need the destruction of the United States as well. Okay. And what better way to destroy them both than to put the strongest military in the world, quote unquote, against the strongest military in NATO and let them fight. Pay attention, guys. Pay attention. And Turkey is in a weakened state. Very weakened state. And let's talk Turkey, but whom does al-Jilani serve? I guess we'll find out.
We
Also,
sure
another thing that someone posed to me today, and I want to give her the credit because she posed this to me. Germany wants to push 80% of its Syrian refugees back to Syria. What an interesting time. Well, what an interesting time to do that. Jolani said, well, we're not going to do that without money. Okay, whatever. What the UAE wants to invade Iran and Iraq if they can. And we know the UAE doesn't have any type of military. They are a mercenary country. They rely on mercenaries. What better army than a bunch of nutty Syrians that are refugees up in Germany and to come down and back to Syria? Come to Syria, Habibi, and we'll pay you. Guys, the very dark things going on. Watch these people, watch their messaging. You know, you might be going for the red meat when you say, yeah, deport the refugees. Keep all of these caveats in mind. Not saying that I don't want to deport refugees. It's not what I'm saying at all. I think Syrian refugees should have already been put back into Syria and assimilated and whatnot. But keep in mind the messaging. There's always something else behind it. And they'll throw you some brown red meat and say, here, engage in some mild or overt racism and have at it. And we're going to move. Look what happened with the Somalis, right? They moved them in. They used them for their money laundering, used them for Somaliland, used them for terrorism in Somalia. And now they're done with them and they're throwing them under the bus.
Yep.
Pay attention. Just pay attention. I worry about everything that's going to happen. I had a very bad vibe last night. Like that something
is on the horizon.
Yeah. Something really bad. Because the Israelis are losing. Israel is a zombie economy being held up by God knows what. Same thing with the United States. They're both ready to do desperate things.
I want to say we're not even talking about Lebanon.
Lebanon is experiencing a crisis larger than the Nakba, which needs to be talked about. We should do a Lebanon show on Sunday.
We're gonna do a Lebanon show for sure. I'm gonna hook that up, and I think that we need to talk about Lebanon because right now Lebanon is also a dividing line. Because even the Maronites and the sort of the former phalangists, hardcore Lebanese forces types, they're deeply concerned as well if Israel goes and then occupies and takes territory and basically creates an even smaller Lebanon with a much more condensed population. So it not only affects the state, it has an internal refugee crisis. Over 1.1 million people are displaced at this point. I just think that I'm telling you, you could see the end of Lebanon state, which of course the Zionist entity would love. The Zionist entity would love Lebanon to disappear. Jolani is, licking his chops here at the opportunity of getting involved, right? I'm telling you, we could see a complete changing of the map, not only in the Gulf, but also in the Levant, and not necessarily in the way that we want to see it. So, yeah, we gotta talk about Lebanon too.
And we shall. That will be our focus next episode. But guys, make sure your focus is also on Lebanon. We have 1 million people displaced. Israel Katz yesterday announced that they will be destroying 600,000 homes up to the Litani River, creating another buffer zone, and called it the Rafah model, or I think he said Rafah model or Rafah method, one or the other, but same difference. So is NATO worth staying in now? Well, no. But
NATO was not worth it.
Yeah, we want
at all,
the destruction of NATO in general, but I need you guys to understand that what probably comes with the destruction of NATO, okay? Because everything all that projection of United States power in Europe comes from NATO. If NATO goes away, you leave Germany, you leave Italy, you leave all of these places. And there goes any of your forward deployed soft power and hard power out there. So is it worth it? That's the red meat, right? That's the red meat for MAGA. We're going to get us out of NATO. Everybody's like, yeah, give me that money. Give me the money back. And then you realize, oh, it was actually just to predicate another war. Why did Trump rip up the JCPOA? Everybody said, the red meat was Obama made it. Obama made it. We got to get rid of everything Obama made. And then you ripped up the JCPOA as what? A precedent for this war. So let's leave NATO as a precedent for the next iteration of the war. I don't know. I'm a little bit right now.
That's right.
All right. I'll let you get to that.
I would like to say that we're going to have a special show sometime this week. I'm going to do some streaming and I'll talk to you all about my trip to China, which has been amazing. I'm sure some of you are going to see some posts coming up, but we have good things coming up as well to bring you from China. China, of course, everyone is saying that the big winners from everything that's happening, China and Russia, but China especially, because China was prepared for this. Russia was prepared for this. Iran was prepared for this. Everybody else, not so much. So we'll see the making of the New World Order in due time.
I'm not a doomer. I'm a realist. You guys don't call Mearsheimer a doomer.
I do not call Mearsheimer a doomer. He is a realist.
We're realists. Okay, guys, we'll see you on Sunday, and Chris will probably see you tomorrow. Love you guys. Talk soon.
Lots of love.